everyone. You are attending our workshop, Helping English Language Learners Move into Careers, Models for Integrating Workforce Preparation and Training. We're thrilled to have you with us today. My name is lbhoward. I'm a CASAS program specialist specializing in IELCE, integrated EL civics. And we have with us today Drew Gamet from South Bay Adult School and Paige Endo from Mount Diablo Adult Education. And you're so lucky to have them telling you about their programs today. So we're really excited. Forgive the annoying sounds. I did try to turn it off and somehow it continued. So hopefully that won't be too annoying. But I want to tell you about our agenda today. We have, you're going to hear about 2 workforce training programs for English language learners. They're going to be 2 20-minute presentations, including questions. And the first one will be a general presentation about career pathways and really administration of career pathways at South Bay Adult School. And Drew Gamet, the director of South Bay Adult, will be telling you about that. And then we have Paige Endo, who is vice principal at Mount Diablo Adult Education, and she will be telling you about their great program, Intro to Health Careers. So just some housekeeping. Please put your questions in the Zoom chat if you have them. There will be time at the end of each presentation for questions. We'll ask you to put them in the chat, and then we might ask you to speak, but please stay muted until then. And if you want the slides to either any of these presentations today.
Lori, I'm sorry, you went mute there for a second.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
I don't know how that happened, but
that was me. Sorry.
Okay, no worries. So if you'd like the slides to this presentation, you can email me, lbhoward at lbhoward@casas.org. Again, please stay muted if you unless you're asked to speak. Okay, getting to know you. I want to do a little poll first. I'm going to ask you these 2 questions. What type of organization do you work for, and how familiar are you with the IELCE IET Career Pathways programs? I'm going to launch a poll. You should see it in just a second. And if you would complete the poll, that would be really great. Okay, so we're getting some answers here. Most of you are from adult schools. I'm 99% voted, so I'm going to end the polling. We have 94% of you are from adult schools, just 1 person from community college, and then the other very important organization, if you would put that in the chat, if you, the 2 of you who said you were from another very important organization that's not one of the 3, if you would please put that in the chat so we know who you are. And familiarity with IELCE IET programs, just a few of you are very familiar, some are moderately familiar, and then we have a very large percentage, 50%, who are not. So this is great. If you're just about to start an IELCE or career pathway program, then you're going to get a lot of great information today to help you get started. Those of you who are familiar with it already, hopefully you'll gain some tips. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't share the results with you. You'll gain some tips on how you might continuously improve your program. So let us move along and talk about our objectives for today. So by the end of this session, you will be able to identify 2 career pathway models. These are the elements that are going to be discussed: administration of the career pathway program, the components, the IET, IELCE components. We're going to mention the 243 co-ops involved in IELCE programs, collaboration to develop a single set of learning objectives, the successes and challenges, and if appropriate, the remote learning and assessment that was involved during this last year. And then I'm going to ask you to consider how any elements of these two models could be implemented at your agency for continuous improvement of your programs. That's going to be our final question. So I just want to remind you that these are the elements of integrated education and training of this WIOA 243 funded grant that most of us are using. Whether or not you're using it, you can be implementing career pathways, and doing it on this model would be great. So the adult education and literacy up there at the top in red are, in California, are ESL classes, English as a second language. That's the literacy we're talking about in the programs we're going to be talking about today. And then workforce preparation, for those of you who are 243 funded, that would be your general workforce preparation, and then the specific instruction that goes along with the 243 funded co-ops. And then workforce training, the CTE, career technical education courses. So all of those three things together make up our IELCE IET program. So I'd like you to share with us any successes you've had in developing and implementing your career pathways IELCE or IET programs at your agency. So if you would type in the chat any successes your program has had, we'd love to hear about it. You can just tell us, some great thing that happened this year. If you don't have any successes, you could put in what you're hoping for, how you're hoping to succeed in the future. Give you a second to type in the chat. Okay, I don't see any responses, so we'll be looking at those, and you can be noticing your colleagues' answers about successes. And if you know about that square with 3 dots in it, you can save the chat if you want to save that information. Okay, sorry. So now we're going to talk about career pathways, and I'm going to introduce Drew Gamet, Director of South Bay Adult School, and I will be bringing up his slides.
Thank you very much. While you're doing pulling those slides up, if I could, this type of work is so much fun, and the reason it's so much fun is the people that I know that I get to work with every day, and so I just wanted to call a couple of them out if I could. First of all, this presentation represents the work of an incredible team here at the South Bay Adult School. Dina Matheson, who's on here, and Brett Pluman, our counselor, are just absolutely incredible to making this this program work. On top of that, we're a part of the South Bay Adult Education Consortium, together with Torrance Unified, Inglewood Unified, Centinela Valley Union High School District, and the El Camino Community College. And again, this didn't happen by itself. We've got wonderful partners, incredible people, and the South Bay Workforce Investment Board, just great people. So thank you very much for that. And it's great to be here. Lori, can I get the next slide? So the big things that I wanted to talk about today is just kind of giving you some of the key pieces of information, the key things related to our partnerships with our Career Pathways program. Next bullet. And then just, it's really important. I wanted to contextualize this. This is what we're presenting is what is important to our students. We're going to talk about that because these programs really aren't about the institutions. They're about the individual students and really meeting their needs. And that's just one of the really key pieces to this. It goes to them as individuals. And the next bullet. And then, really, making sure that we're setting ourselves up for equity as we're moving forward in that. It's a key piece. I know I've been attending some of the presentations on that. That is a key part of our success in this whole process. So next slide, please. So I wanted to give this first. I know when I go to conferences, sometimes I want to get some of those resources, like what has been really affecting our mindset as we've been going through this process. And so I wanted to give you some insight into that. First of all, from the moment I got this job, the California Adult Education Program Fiscal Management Guide has been the key document. If you don't have it, I highly recommend that you download it and get to know it really, really well, because that is just a really important tool. After that, just in terms of organizing and focusing our school, Crimes Against Learning, just a really, really wonderful document to get involved with. Next slide. And then I've been a Marzano DeFore fan for a long time. Again, if you're really trying to dial in instruction, doesn't matter the level, great instruction is great instruction. And also just having the foundations for teachers, especially, I'm going to talk about this, the importance of getting teachers from two culturally different institutions to work together and at a high level, which is really important. Next slide. And then finally, really some of the things that I know that we've been using, I've been using as a school district, we've been using in terms of documents for having hard conversations and really looking at equity for our program. Next slide. So starting with confronting the data that you have in front of you. And I think that's one of the things that makes CTE, ILETC so important and so tricky, because it really is about creating a high quality program that serves what is around you. It's not a cookie cutter type of thing that just can be rolled out in every single community exactly the same way. So making sure that you, thank you, CASAS, have really solid student information data within your own school to really understand what's going on with your students. Looking at what the community colleges needs are. So when you're reaching out to them, what are they seeing? They should be seeing things with their own students. They're tracking data just as just at a same intense level as we are. And then really, how do those two data sets merge together? And where are we finding areas where we can really help? Again, this is always laid out there. You have to look at your local labor statistics. The Los Angeles County Development Corporation, LADC, is really, really helpful in providing us with this kind of information. But at the same time, it really does, a lot of this process does matter that you are getting into the community and you are talking directly with people and you're getting that anecdotal information back and forth. That has to do with just other members of your consortium, local employers, your own students, having those conversations with students and students that have left you. Where are they going? What is the impact that your school is happening? And then really looking at your consortium's 3-year plan and stepping up, making those adjustments and changes where you need it. And then obviously taking all these data sets together, where are the inconsistencies coming up? Where is their problem? Data is never perfect when you're analyzing it. So when you're looking at information and you're seeing something that in some cases may be contradictory in terms of what's going on with students at a community college, is the structures in place? Do you have regular meetings where you can come together and talk about those issues? Next slide. So now we're talking about the planning with the partners. And so it's even important to just kind of look, now that you've got the data, okay, what are we going to do? Is there a system already in place that needs to be altered? Or has the needs of the student, the needs of the community, the needs of the employers in the community, or the needs of the community college gotten to the point where things are so different from where maybe the program that you're in charge of and was running has changed so much that you almost need to tear it down and start again? Those are really important questions to have when you're starting the collaboration and process. One of the most important things I have found, though, is that because the process of collaboration with community college involves another culture of instruction, another culture of addressing student needs. In many cases, this certainly is the case in our situation. Also, an institution that is just so much bigger than us. It's so easy for your key product to get lost. And that product is, I believe, always instruction. So are you really providing students with the type of experience when they're going into these programs and they're looking for these different whether it's, maybe it's child development, or maybe it's machining and manufacturing, or maybe it's shipping logistics or entrepreneurship. It doesn't matter. But is the instruction that the student's receiving really resulting in what you need to see, which is hard results, people getting jobs, people getting employment through your local workforce investment board that is subsidized or unsubsidized. All of those things are what you're looking at. And in order to meet that, you really have to be looking at, okay, am I supporting the student in the classroom, the student getting the academic supports that they need in order to be able to complete their programs, and then turn around? Are they getting their needs met so they can even just show up or be a part of what they need to in order to participate? Does their job schedule change, and are you able to accommodate that? Are you able to give them something where they can continue in their program? Or maybe they have an issue with childcare, or maybe they have an issue with some sort of with elder care, which happens a lot. Or did they even, especially in this environment, did they just flat out lose their job? Did they lose income streams? Are they housing insecure? All of those issues need to be addressed. In our specific case, we found it just critical to have a staff member that is specifically tasked with supporting students in those areas. It's very critical. And then communication. I want to get into a little bit deeper, because that's really talking to your students, and talking to your students in a way that they can understand what you're actually offering is just so unbelievably important. The other thing I just think is just really important when it comes to planning with your partners is to make sure that you are defining success matrix for your collaborations that are reasonable. It's so important to be able to show, as you're working through a process, that you are having success, and success building on success. And so that's another really, really important point. And especially if you're new to this whole process, just please, the biggest thing, this is not a solo exercise. You can't do it alone. So you have to find people that you can effectively collaborate with. So when it comes to instruction in adult schools, we have found that it's very easy to put together groups to collaborate with each other. And then the community college seems to have its own culture for instruction, and really bringing those two together and having conversations between the two organizations and say, look, in the interests of students, we need to set aside a specific amount of time on a weekly basis in order for us to talk back and forth about what the students need, and talk about, so from the point of view of our instructors are ESL instructors. The CTE instructors work and live over in the community college world, and bringing those two groups together on a weekly basis, that there's a meeting and there's a chance for the instructor to talk about what they need from a content point of view, and an opportunity for the adult school instructor to say, okay, here are the supports that I can provide to help you meet those needs that you're having when you're in the class. That has to be regular, it has to be ongoing, and it has to be planned for. And there is a cost involved with that. And so that's the other piece that is really, really important, is to make sure that's built in. It's really hard when you know that you've got students to provide service to. You need to support them. And it's like, well, I just have finite resources. It has to be in there. If you don't plan for the planning, if you don't account for it with the resources that you have available, you're going to have problems, because that is where you really, really, really get that meaningful collaboration between the two institutions. Next one. So again, I want to go, I can't overemphasize this. Yes, it is important to have explicit in-class supports. It is important that for so many of these students, the reality is at least for a lot of our students, they're already working other jobs. Many of them already have families. You can't say, oh, well, this is no problem. We'll give you, all we need for you to do is commit to an extra 16 hours of instruction a week and problem solved. We don't have that amount of time. It's got to be fast, it's got to be effective, it's got to be very precise, and it's got to deal directly with those student needs. And so what we think is really, really important is that the supports are in the classroom. It is real time, instruction is going on, We have an instructor there that is there to help the students in real time. And then the one extra, because we know that is such valuable time, if the student is going to give us extra time, is a lab class that would occur outside of the regular instruction, but gives one of our teachers an opportunity to go directly to our students and say, okay, where are you struggling? Where is community college making life rough? We can provide additional support for students, and oftentimes we will recommend maybe an additional class if there is a specific deficit, maybe related to writing or maybe related to mathematics, especially in the case of students, for example, that are going through, for example, Cisco CNA certification. Yeah, they may need an extra class, but as much as possible, if we can do it in real time in the classroom, it's so much more effective for students. And then outside, supporting providing those supports outside of the classroom, making sure the flexible schedules. And one of the ones that I know that so many of you had to address all of a sudden last spring is the access to technology. The reality is broadband access across communities is just abysmal for what students need. And that is a real dividing line for students to be able to access these kinds of programs. So being able to solve that issue, in our case, we're bringing into being a rental program where students will be able to have access to materials, but very, very key piece to it. And on top of that, again, I would refer back to our career planning and support coordinator, which is a person who is specifically there to make a connection for students with the Workforce Investment Board, to make connections with students with other resources for rental support if they need that, food insecurity if they, well, not to get food insecurity, but to access to food. All of those different types of resources are just so key that there is a person dedicated to supporting students in that way. And finally, communication. One thing that we have changed over the last 2 years, and luckily we did make this shift prior to the hit of the pandemic, is really adding an extra piece into our communication toolkit, and that's social media. On a foundational level, yes, it's critical that you have multiple ways that you're communicating with your students. The most important of which is actually being at community events, going to places, having a tent that's easily recognized, or things that are very visual for students so that they can see where you are and come, and you can make those personal one-on-one connections with them. But I can't tell you how important social media has been for us. And when I say social media, I want to clarify what exactly I'm talking about. I am not talking about just posting on Facebook. That is not what has been helpful. We have a consulting firm that we work with specifically, and we have one person who's assigned with us, and there's so much data to be mined from social media in terms of interacting with students. I know that there's been a lot of controversy and a lot of bad use of social media in the public sphere as of late, but I have to tell you that there is a lot of good that can come from social media. It's really a two-way flow of information, because you're sending information out and students immediately have the ability to respond back to the things that you're saying and you're seeing. It's so much easier for it to be multilingual for students, because, for example, if a student is using Facebook and they're an English learner and maybe the primary language that they're used to looking at Facebook in is Farsi, well, then automatically all of our messages that are going out are auto-translated. And that goes for both the text things that we put out, but there are certain settings in the videos. You can send a video out and it will listen to the text, and it will auto-generate subtitles, which may not be perfect, but a lot of times they're better than nothing. And then the data that we get from the analytics. So we can see how students are interacting with our posts. So when they're clicking on things, or they're liking things, or they're commenting on things, we can see all of that activity, what exactly is going on. And when we promote stuff out to our general community, we can see the types of things that the students want to see. We can see the types of information that they want to see. And so we can get information from just their reactions to this, to what we're doing. From a funding point of view, it certainly is a block expense, but it is so much less expensive than, for example, doing traditional paper mailers. It's just mind blowing, and you can really control who's seeing your materials. And if anyone wants more information on that, please just contact me directly. But social media has just been really key for us. And then equity. I mean, this has been just a piece that we have had to really dive into, and I've gotten some of these pieces of information, and I know that all of you who are working with our student populations have seen this. The biggest one, the most tragic one, students that were not successful in their K-12 education blame themselves for their lack of success. That makes me angry, because it's not their fault. But making sure that we have programs that are going specifically and explicitly after these target groups, and then checking our NRS on a very regular basis to make sure that we are actually getting the outcomes that we want. So I would just say that in that, it's just so important that for every single question, as you're having the conversations, and it's okay if there are people within your organization that have this attitude of, if this group, if they would just do this thing, or if they just do that. There's always going to be people like that. The trick is you got to sit down and have the conversations and really get them to understand it's no. What can we do? What are we responsible for? What is in our control? And how can we really make sure that we're serving the needs of those students? We want to, because we're looking at increasing quality instruction. We're making sure that the students have supports in and out of the classroom, access to technology, internet, and making sure that their access is equitable. And sometimes there's just not enough time. But when you focus on those things of what's really important for your organization, I know that's going to lead to your guys' success. And if you like, we have a little QR code up there on the screen. So if you wanted to check out some of the stuff that we have going on at our school, definitely just snap a picture of that, and you can see what we're doing, and we can answer any of your questions.
Thank you so much, Drew. That was a great presentation, and you got a lot of, as we hoped, you got a lot of questions about social media. So both Paul and Carrie want to know first if you have a consultant, social media consultant, and if so, what the name of the organization is that you work with on the two-way info flow on social media.
So I would say this: we do work with a group. Specifically, they are out of Columbus, Ohio. Their name is Approach. I'd rather just, if I could answer the question though, by just kind of telling you how we found them, because I think that's key. You need to find a social media organization that works for what you want to do, because there's lots of different ways that this could go. We are very focused. We knew that we wanted to have a presence on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And we knew that we knew nothing beyond just kind of being fans of these platforms. And so I just talked to a lot of my friends and family members that are in the marketing sector, about who they might know in that area, and got some references to some different companies that were interested in talking with me, and most of them were, about what we're actually looking for and what we need. And then I was also interested in finding a company that had already worked with certain educational organizations. Now, granted, the company that we work with had never worked with an adult school, but they had worked with colleges and universities, and then they had worked with some private activity companies, like swim schools and things like that. And had some conversations, explained to them what we needed, and mostly what I was looking for was a group of people who were listening to us, because what
Thank
we
you.
got was a lot of people saying, do this. I wanted them to listen to what we needed.
So thank you, Drew. So a lot of questions about social media, which is a great topic, and we want to have that conversation. There's a few things in the chat. If you want to continue asking in the chat, Drew will answer. But now we want to move to Paige Endo, who is vice principal at Mount Diablo Adult Education, and she's going to give you a more specific information about her specific career pathway. So Paige, go ahead.
All right. Well, thank you and welcome everyone. As Lori mentioned, I'm Paige Endo, Vice Principal at Mount Diablo Adult Education and former longtime adult ed ESL teacher. In fact, I see in the participants somebody that I met at the start of my career in Japan in the 80s. Hey, Kathy. And I'm also I was a longtime program coordinator as well. And may I just say that attending this conference has helped remind me of how much I love our field and am blessed to have made my career in it. Next slide, please. Okay, I am trying to look at my slides, my notes on the screen, but I think I'll go back to paper. Mount Diablo Adult Education has 2 approved IELCE programs, one that's actually happening and the other one that is taking us a while to have take off. Intro to Healthcare Careers and Office Professionals. We also have an honorable mention, which is Project Access. This is an early childhood education pathway that has been in existence here for over 10 years. And it starts cohorts of ESL students at the adult school and transitions them to our local community college, armed with foundational knowledge of early childhood education and academic skills. Although we had 18 students enroll in our fall Intro to Healthcare Careers class, only 10 students actually had any attendance. I will be talking about our Intro to Healthcare Careers class today and want to point out before I start that all of the photos that you see on these slides are of our own actual career technical education students in the various allied health career pathways that our Intro to Healthcare Career Path students can go into. That's a mouthful. Next slide, please. And I wrote it, so I'm guilty. Here we have some spring updates. One student from the fall Intro to Healthcare Career class has successfully completed the CTE orientation steps and all of the requirements and has enrolled in the medical assistant program. In fact, she just spoke this week to Assemblymember Grayson for Ledge Day, and she did a fabulous job. She also emailed the instructors to volunteer, first of all, to thank them for helping her. She said she never would have made it if it hadn't been for them. And she volunteered to come back to the class to encourage and talk to students about transitioning at the end of this term. So we're happy about that. 21 students enrolled into the Intro to Healthcare Careers class, but again, only 10 are actively attending this spring. There's a little pattern there. 3 students from our first ever accelerated Project Access class transitioned to the community college for this current spring term, and they are enrolled in the Project Access Early Childhood Education and linked ESL classes there. 15 students are currently enrolled in our traditional Project Access class here at the adult school, getting ready for transition to the community college in fall 2021. Our partner is Diablo Valley College, that they're located in Pleasant Hill, California. And we're hopeful that most of our 15, if not all, will be able to transition in the fall. Next slide, please. Our Intro to Healthcare Careers class is a co-teaching model with an ESL teacher joining the teacher in the workforce preparation class. We are fortunate that the workforce preparation teacher happens to be adult secondary, ESL, and CTE, Career Technical Education certified. We do the 71.1 COAP, which is healthcare worker, formerly called personal care aide. In brief, students, as you can see on this slide, students learn to identify and describe 3 factors of patient abuse and the proper reporting policy. They learn to respond to patient complaints by paraphrasing, asking open-ended questions, and offering solutions. And they also learn and practice their active listening skills. We have a set of 10 single learning objectives for the course that were developed by an interdepartmental team. These focus largely on students being able to write the associated signs and symptoms of disease in the respiratory, circulatory, digestive, and skeletal systems, demonstrating orally and in writing a working knowledge of medical prefixes and suffixes in medical terminology. There's also a little bit of basic math that is related to medical work-related tasks and responsibilities, and these are all specifically spelled out in the objectives. And then also included are the practical patient-focused objectives of the COAP that I mentioned earlier. So how do we get students into class? Next slide, please. Prior to COVID, we did face-to-face registration for our ESL programs. And we had flyers about this class in our ESL placement office and a short blurb in our quarterly printed catalog. We also announced information about the classes in the intermediate low 2 and above ESL classes. And it probably was also on our website. Now that both the class and registration process is 100% online, at least for now, recruitment still happens at registration. However, the process now includes asking every ESL student at the appropriate level if they're interested in one of our pathway classes. While the class is still small, since changing to this form of promoting the class, more students than before have signed up. So that's a good one. Some of the benefits of remote learning are, and I know you all know these, students don't have to worry about childcare or transportation. And just a little side note, in our a different EL Civics co-op that we did, we surveyed as part of the co-op, 170 students responded to what the challenges and the things that they liked about online learning. And one of the things was that they really liked not having to waste time and sit in traffic. So that was another piece that has been good about the online. The class only meets on Zoom once a week, but the students are provided with online tools to continue practicing on their own throughout the week. Next slide, please. There are 2 financial aid counselors in the CTE department that can guide students with Pell and other grants such as WIOA. We have an in-house transition specialist, and we are an AJCC access site, and AJCC stands for America's Job Center of California. Though mostly everything is remote for now, we're starting to come back, and they're starting to come back. I was going to say in dribs and drabs, but it's kind of like that. And free meals are offered in partnership with Loaves and Fishes, along with other supports with other partners, primarily started for our CNA program, but which are open to all students and staff. So what does the co-teaching look like in practice? Next slide, please. Okay, so as you can see on the 3 bullets up here, the content instructor focuses on teaching medical terminology and major systems in the body. The ESL teacher seamlessly weaves in as the other teacher is teaching, and she doesn't interrupt or talk over, but there's, she just takes advantage of every little pause and asks clarifying questions, asks questions that check for comprehension. She reminds students to practice their writing by asking questions or commenting in the chat. She practices pronunciation with the students. And then as soon as the the other teacher is ready. So let's say the other teacher is getting something ready, like to bring up something else to share her screen. During that little pause, um, the ESL teacher is using that time. And as soon as the other teacher is ready, she just fades back again. It's really nice to see their teamwork. Even though it was a very new partnership, neither teacher had ever team taught in this way before, and now they've learned to teach and co-teach online. So where can this class take students? What is the pathway? Next slide, please. These are the various industry recognized certifications that our MDAE CTE programs lead to. All of our CTE programs include externships in the field, and that is so important that they get to put it into practice. You might be wondering, oh, sorry, I just want to mention, popped into my head. So we just went through our WASC review and are waiting for that. And we're also certified by, or accredited, excuse me, by COE, the Council on Occupational Education. So that's a national accreditation that we also just went through. You might be wondering what is working or what our successes have been. Next slide, please. I am so happy to say that we now have more ownership of this IET class and pathway among our departments and staff, and it's taken us some years now. We also have a couple of teachers that were willing to try this co-teaching model out, and online at that. The class is small, but we have students. The teachers are using a variety of tech tools and are learning from each other. You know, one might be tech savvy and one might be more ESL savvy, knowing how to break down the information, for example. And they get to see the other's expertise on display and benefit from that, as do our students. Naturally, we have had and have our challenges also. Next slide, please. So I have a list of challenges up here. Some of the successes listed on the previous slide were challenges before they became successes. We have addressed the first two on this list by changing the class from a 12-week class to a semester-long class. So it's approximately 16 weeks long. And that was in order for the CTE and ESL program start and end dates to align. We have a number of different programs and departments, and they all have their own start dates and end dates. And so it is very difficult for students to actually make the leap and make the transition. So now it's more seamless. The interim CTE program coordinator and CTE instructor also modified the curriculum for the spring term by making some of it more of an overview rather than a deep dive. In order to make the content more manageable and digestible in the time available. The CTE orientation steps and enrollment process were difficult for the students to understand. And as it turns out, they were difficult for the IET teachers to figure out also. So the CTE coordinator arranged for one of the CTE financial aid staff to visit the IET Zoom class and explain to students step by step what they needed to do. And I'm sorry, there are people in the office behind me talking, and now our landscaper is out there doing work. So I hope it's not too distracting. The spring 2020 pilot class asked for more hands-on practice of skills, and then COVID-19 hit. So we are looking at the possibility of adding a hybrid model in fall 2021 with an online portion and a hands-on skills portion of the class. We may also add more ESL support if and as needed. Next slide, please. As I conclude sharing about our fledgling IET program, I want to share that collaboration among our staff and departments continues to be a challenge. It's not for lack of desire or belief in the goal or program or the students. It is rather the multiple demands on people's time and talents and the many hats adults wear. It's hard to step back and plan for the big picture or what's coming up in summer or fall when there is so much on our daily plates and we're in the weeds of what we're doing every day. I imagine you can relate. This is where the pressure of our WIOA grant requirements actually helps push our persistence. We keep talking to each other and taking another step and another step. And although it's slow and takes time, a step forward is a step forward. It's progress. Keeping the vision alive and sharing it with the related staff members helps to spark people's imagination and eventually helps the work to move forward. Sometimes it takes time for the idea to take root and bear fruit. But as each person catches the vision and sees his or her or their role in fulfilling it for the benefit of students, it doesn't just create buy-in. More importantly, it creates ownership, and that drives momentum and the will to persist in collaboration. Teachers and students may be outside of their comfort zones for a while. Team teaching isn't necessarily comfortable at first. Transitioning to a class, if you're an ESL student, to a content class, while exciting, might be intimidating. That's just to name a couple. For the ESL teacher, it might be intimidating or uncomfortable also to be in a content class when they're not a content expert, and they might wonder about their competence, which could affect their confidence. But as the programs and classes and wraparound supports take shape, it becomes the way we work and becomes comfortable again. The reality is that things always change, so we may need to adapt our classes and programs so that they continue to serve students well. My mantra lately has been, let's think about what is possible, and let's think about how we can make it happen rather than all the ways we think it can't. Next slide, please. Thank you so much for your interest in our IELCE IET program. I hope you either already do have or will soon have success with your own programs. And take care and continue to enjoy and remember what a great field we work in. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Paige, for the inspiring presentation about your great program. I really appreciate it. And you have a question here from Serena. When recruiting during registration, do the students take this class in addition to their 231 ESL class? And how do you organize the schedule, if so?
Students may take both if they like. This class is only one night a week currently, and so they can. I don't believe that the majority of the students, but I could be wrong, I didn't pull that data. I don't think that the majority of them were taking a separate ESL class, but they certainly could. I know the one student that I mentioned earlier that transitioned to the medical assistant program, she's continuing to take ESL at the same time that she's in the medical assistant program. So, so certainly they're welcome to. As Drew mentioned earlier, you know, students have limits on their time. They're adults too, right? So it's challenging. It is challenging, but we offer ESL classes morning, afternoon, and evening. And we also offer Burlington English and some other distance learning options as well. So I think that it's possible.
Thank you. Any other questions that anyone has for either Paige or Drew? I have given you their, they've given you, and I've given you their email addresses, and luckily they're so kind to offer you to contact them. I also want to give you the resources that we have on the EL Civics website at CASAS.org, a whole page of civic participation and IELCE presentations and information, especially the two here that are highlighted: planning and implementing a new IELCE IET program. Since many of you are either new or not so familiar with these programs, that kind of workshop might be helpful to you. It's a webinar and slides. And also, if you're part of the IELCE program, then you'll need to work on developing a single set of learning objectives, and there's a workshop there also. Also, recently, I wrote an article on the EL Civics program in California. If you're interested in learning about the history of EL Civics in California, a 20-year-old program, you could access this. And since you maybe are, since you're members of CCAE, you are also members of COABE, and maybe you're already getting the journal. So look for it on page 32. Before we go, I'd love you to type in the chat, what is one element you heard about that could be implemented at your agency to enhance your agency's career pathway, IELCE or IET program. If you would leave with a little chat to us, we'd really appreciate it so we can see perhaps what you might have gleaned. In a minute, as we get to our end of our time, we will end the recording, but we'll be on the line for a few minutes more if you have any further questions. Maybe we had one question. What is the level of ESL students, Paige? That was the question here. Oh, I see. And you answered it, intermediate, low, and above. Great.
Right.
Okay. And so
Yeah.
Takeaways, social media, great ideas. And that's one of the things we wanted you to share. And ABE, CTE co-teaching, takeaways. Wonderful. Thank you so much for your participation. If we can be of help to you, please contact any one of us. If you want the slides to this presentation, email me at lbhoward@casas.org and I will send you all the slides. Thank you for your participation today. Hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.